Hello, everybody. Welcome to my desk here, right, in the mountain village of Aulla in Tuscany, Italy. Today, I want to talk about Leibniz and the influence of the German mystic Jacob Böhme, right, on Leibniz's work. Right. So Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, born 1646, died 1716. Is known primarily as a mathematician, but he's really a polymath. He's a mathematician, philosopher, right, and so on. Today, what I want to focus in on is his binary number system, right? So in the decimal system, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? But in the binary system that Leibniz developed, right, 1 corresponds to 1, 2 to 10, 3 corresponds to 11, 4 corresponds to 100, 5 corresponds to 101, 6 to 110, 7 corresponds to 111, right? 8 would correspond to 1000. So you see the pattern. And Leibniz himself associated his binary system, right? I started with 1, but it actually starts with 0. Right, both decimal and the binary system start with 0. And he associated this binary system with these 64 hexagrams, right, of the I Ching. Right, and if many of our listeners may know of the I Ching through Philip K. Dick's Man in the High Castle novel that was made into an Amazon multi-season series that ran from 2015 to 2019. In any case, I don't want to go in depth about the I Ching. I'm going to assume you either know about it or you can educate yourself later. Right, so Leibniz associated his binary system, right, with the 64 hexagrams, right, of the I Ching, right? And so that would cover the binary numbers from 0 to a series of 6 number ones, so 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Right, now Leibniz realized, right, the revolutionary implications of this binary system, because with the 0 and 1, now theoretically you could plug in any other 2 numbers, digits, right? But he stuck with the first 2, so 0 and 1. With those, you could generate, create any conceivable, any potential number, right? And we use the same basic system today in the modern binary numeral system, right? And so most people are going to know about that, right? In thinking of modern computers and the use of 0 and 1, right, as the basis for encoding just about anything you want to. Everything is a 0 and 1. And universal data, or, right, if you think of the information of physics or physics information, right, it's the same thing. The entire universe, right, can be described, right, with symbolically with 0 and 1, right? It's either on or it's off, right? And various combinations of those are going to produce the results that you're looking for. And so, being a theist, Leibniz associated the 0 with the nihilo, of the creatio ex nihilo idea, the creation from nothing, right? And the 1, he associated it with God's power to create, the divine power to create. Now, of course, if we think of quantum computers, the attempt to create a quantum computer, what's happening there is your information bits, which in the classical system is represented by the 0 and 1, it's either on or off, right? In a qubit, those would be in quantum superposition, right? So the 0 and the 1 then become qubits. Now for that, we actually have an interesting, we call it symbolic precedent in the writings of Jakob Böhme. He's a German mystic who, let's say, born 1575, and let's see, he died in 1624, I believe. All right, so we know he influenced, right, Leibniz's monadology, right, which I believe Julian Barber has discussed in relation to his ideas, that is Barber's ideas of physics, and also the writings of Böhme also influenced and shaped Leibniz's treatise called the True Mystical Theology. Anyway, I don't want to go there today, but I want to bring your attention to the final basically the final work of Jakob Böhme, and it's called the 177 Theosophic Questions. It was never finished, but what is there, right, is enough to give us sort of an ideational, unfinished symphony, if you will. Question 3 is what I want to focus in on, because in question 3, Böhme starts out, right, using a theological language and saying that love and anger, the divine love and anger, are really the same thing. Right, two sides of the same coin, maybe is one way to say it, or you're just looking at the same entity from different viewpoints, different vantage points, right? But then he continues and he says that all things come to be by means of and comprise a simultaneous yes and no, which are really the same thing. Just like love and anger are the same thing, yes and no are basically the same thing. Now, this is a sort of course, Böhme didn't anticipate quantum mechanics or quantum physics by any means, but right, so this is a sort of symbolic anticipation in that he sees that the yes and the no, right, are in a sort of what we would call a superposition, right? So the Ja in German and the Nein, of course he's writing in German, so the Ja would correspond to 1, right, in Leibniz's binary system, and the Nein or no would correspond to 0 in the binary number system of Leibniz. But whereas Leibniz has a classical model, so that 0 and 1, right, succeed each other, Böhme has them as inseparable, simultaneous, inseparable entities. Right? So that they cannot exist apart from each other. And all beings comprise this simultaneous yes and no. Right? And I mentioned the hexagrams of the I Ching that Leibniz associated with his binary, the first, the 64 hexagrams, right? He's corresponding to the first 64 entries or digits in the binary number system. Well, Böhme in the 177 Theosophic Questions also has his own hexagram, right? It's lined up differently than the ones in the I Ching, which are just, a series of 6 lines in various configurations, 64 configurations, possible ones. What Böhme does is he's using the symbology of alchemy, and so he has the his hexagrams comprise the upright triangle, which represents fire, and the superimposed inverted triangle, which symbolizes water. And so this, right, then coincides with the Jewish star, as it can be called, the shield of David, the Star of David, which is also, of course, Solomon's hexagram, right? And now the final point to make here is that Böhme also associates this yes and no with God or the divine, just as Leibniz does later, under his influence, I would say. But what is particularly interesting, and this is a new contribution from me, which is not in the literature on Böhme, and that is, if you read throughout question 3 in the 177 Theosophic Questions and beyond, you will see that actually Böhme is associating the German adverb ja, or yes, with the short form of the Tetragrammaton, the holy name of God in Judaism, right? The short form being Yah, right? And the full form, right? Orthodox Jews do not pronounce. They just say the 4 letters that comprise it, Yud Ke Vav Ke, or Yod He Vav He, right? So the sacred Tetragrammaton, the short form Yah, as in the well-known word Hallelujah, Hallelujah. So praise Yah. So Böhme is actually associating the Yah, the yes, right, with the divine name Yah. And so the divine name Yah, it corresponds to Leibniz's 1, and Böhme's 9 or 0, right, negation, right, corresponds to the binary number 0 as well. But this is the power of creation or existence, and the aspect of non-existence, right? And so everything that is simultaneously not. It is and it isn't, right? And so this, in philosophical terms, right, contributes to the understanding of why nothing is immortal, right? Anything that has a physical form or structure, right, it's will come to an end, which is not incompatible with the idea, for instance, that energy and matter are mutually convertible into each other, right? And that energy gets transformed, but is never destroyed, right? So, but anyway, that's something for another conversation in the future, perhaps. But this one note that's pertinent for Böhme scholarship would be that Böhme's knowledge of this Hebrew short form of the Tetragrammaton, I would say, is attributable to the influence, the late influence of Abraham von Frankenberg, right? And so before that influence kicks in Böhme, we don't see too much real concrete evidence in Böhme for knowledge of Kabbalistic, Hebrew words that are pertinent and important for the so-called Christian Kabbalah, that is their own reworking of Jewish mysticism, of Jewish Kabbalah. And one final point to close on. Now, if we recall Leibniz's 0 and 1, the first 2 digits in his binary number system, right? Recall that he associates the 0 with the nihilo of creatio ex nihilo, right? So creation from nothing, right? And the 1 with God's power to create. We could, of course, look at that in non-theistic terms as well, right? That referencing the Big Bang, so-called, that all language here must be analogical and symbolical, because prior to the Big Bang, there is no causality or temporality, right? And so anything we say cannot be taken literally, right, and applied to what comes before, right? So you see the limitations of language. Anyway, the universe emerges from nothing. It goes from, you could say, non-existence to existence, right? Now, and that's the classical way of looking at it from the Leibnizian perspective, right? From the 0 and 1, and various combinations of the 0 and 1 gets you a universe and all the objects within it, or the objects that comprise the universe. But now, if you take this to Böhme and his so-called, his symbolic superposition of yes and no, right? Or let's say no and yes, because he privileges the no over the yes. The no comes before the yes, actually, he says. So you have the state of non-existence not being followed by existence, but being superimposed upon it, or with it, all right? And so so in that sense, you could symbolically describe the universe in Böhme's terms as a superposition of existence and non-existence, right? So, quote unquote, before the Big Bang, there's nothing. There's non-existence. Quote unquote, after the Big Bang, there is existence, but this existence, inhering in it, is non-existence. You could not have the existence without the non-existence. So something of what was before the Big Bang is still a feature of what comes after the Big Bang. The universe is sort of a quantum, quote unquote, quantum superposition of being and non-being. So perhaps we could correlate this with some recent theorizing by Neil Turok, right, where he poses the universe, right, being accompanied by sort of an antiverse, right, where the antiverse, the particles are moving backwards in time, right, a la Feynman, for instance. But it's not as if, well, see, even though in his diagram he shows the universe on one side and the antiverse sort of connected to each other, and then in the middle is, right, sort of like a quantum state, right, that connects these two. Actually, if I'm understanding Turok correctly, this antiverse is actually imbricated within the universe. So the forward arrow of time, right, is imbricated in this temporal reverse, right? But it's sort of, imbricated within each other, right? And so this can be the foundations, I think, for further speculation on cosmology and the beginning, right, of everything. So, of course, Böhme, as I said, was not anticipating modern quantum physics, right? But symbolically, I think, right, there's some overlap in his thinking with it. And then it works well because it then does have an influence on Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz's binary system, even though that binary system is classical, right? The 0 and the 1, right, are successive. They're not superimposed, as are the no and the yes, right, in Böhme. So with that, I'll come to an end and say that if you found anything of interest in this, please consider subscribing to this channel. And consider a donation through Patreon or through PayPal. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.